My name is Elaine Jones. My maiden name was Elaine Trevesta Johnson. The Emancipation Proclamation was officially signed in January 1st, 1863. I was born 76 years later on January 31st, 1939, in Reidsville, North Carolina. My mother was the youngest of 6 children of William and Letty Searcy. My grandmother, Letty, was born in 1877, 14 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. She was the third child produced by the rape of her mother, Sarah, by the same white man who lived down the road from her father's farm, who violated her whenever he felt like it. Letty's grandfather, Robert Gwynn, was the colored county commissioner for Rockingham County. He was a third-grade teacher and the stimulus for the building of the one-room schoolhouse for the colored children that bore his name. Yet he had no power to protect his beautiful daughter from the predatory acts of sexual violence by a white neighbor. This was information I learned after I was grown. Our family history was never discussed around the children. It was adult conversation. I realized that my generation is only 1 or 2 generations removed from the days of slavery, the Civil War, and the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Yet, our lives are the least documented. You might say we're the silent generation. What was the daily life like for the average person born so close to such major events? Oh, sure, we've all heard of the lives of people who broke through the wall of suppression to gain fame, like Jackie Robinson, Martin Luther King, Sammy Davis, or Lena Horne. But what about your grandparents, your neighbors, or older acquaintances? They did not have Facebook and Twitter to record what they ate, wore, experienced, or thought about minute by minute. With this in mind, I contacted some of my old friends to remember the days of our youth. I hope you will enjoy meeting them and the memories they shared. Our elders may not have had time to spend talking to us in depth about life experiences, but they passed on their knowledge through ancestor truisms. These are some of the truisms. Nothing beats a failure but a try. You're too old for your wants to hurt. You can't get blood from a turnip. A whistling woman and a crowing hen will never come to any good end. I'll give you something to cry about.
My name is Queen Adele Washington Sutton. I was born May the 30th, 1930, on a place called The Hill in Govan, South Carolina. My name is Julia W. Henson. My birthday is January the 4th, 1928. I was born in a little town called Govan, South Carolina. I know you wouldn't know it. My dad was a sharecropper we didn't have our own farm. A sharecropper is you work for the broker. We used to call a white man the broker. You work for the broker all year, and at the end of the year, they total up what you picked through the year, and they go to the general store, and they have material, all kinds of stuff in there, and you pick what you feel that you have worked for the year. You would get white everything, white grits, white cornmeal, white rice, and fatback. That's what they would give you. Now my mother could read and write, so she kept a record. And when she went to pick her thing, John Frank, who was the owner of our sharecropper, and my mother knew what she wanted. She would tell them what she wanted. Things where we could make our clothes and whatnot, and underwear and all this. And John Frank came in, and she had her little thing. Maran, what you doing? I'm picking things for my family. No nigger keep no records on me. My mama said, I don't work in your damn field there. And she left. My mother was tough. When my dad came along later, I guess after they finished picking cotton in the field, John Frank told him that no nigger keep no records on me. So I guess Dad didn't know. We said, what, your Maram keeping records on me. No nigger keep no records on me. And he told my dad to kill her. And Dad said, well, that's my wife and mother, my children. He said, you won't serve a day and your children won't suffer. The folk that were sharecropping, they came past in the morning. Maran, you come on, we go. I ain't going to no damn field. And she never went back. And
how did you all get to Philadelphia?
My mother knew that she'd had trouble down there with the people. They'd end up killing her because she was a rebel. So she decided she couldn't stay down there no longer.
They had something going down south. If somebody up here with a car would bring somebody down, then he'd take somebody back. That's how many people got here. That was an important way of getting people, because the people didn't have anything. You worked all week long and you barely had enough. So that's how my sister and I got up here.
When we got here, we would live. We went to my uncle's house on Montgomery Avenue. When I saw the plane, I was scared that the big bird was gonna get me. I started crying because I had never seen a plane. We had an uncle named Uncle Jeff. He said, "What's your name, little girl?" I stuttered terribly, and I said, "Mud." He said, "I declare, my name is Jeff," and everybody laughed.
So that was the start of our coming here.
Coming to Philadelphia.
Coming to Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And even though my father and my two brothers didn't come then, they did come. Up 1938, now we were here 3 years, my cousin, my aunt, my uncle's wife, died. And so my mother said to her brother, my uncle, when you go down to bury, because that's what people used to do. Mm-hmm. You died here, they take you home. So they took Aunt Minnie home to bury her. And Mom said, would you bring my husband and my
John and the boys.
And the boys said he wants to see his children.
The mom had sent for them before on several occasions, and Grandpa wouldn't let them come up because he wanted them to help on the farm. Promised the next time to send him, to send for him, I'll let him go.
And it wasn't nice. My grandfather called the sheriff. They called the sheriff, and they told my uncle to get off the property.
So he didn't. When my uncle and those came for him, he went to get the sheriff to keep them from taking John and Frederick. They got on the horse, was booking it up the highway, and they heard this car. And they got scared and jumped into the dry ditch. A dry ditch is where water is, but it dries out. And the car stopped right at them. Said he was so scared because he thought, the Bruckers was coming. And Grandpa and Uncle AC, that was my Uncle AC that lived in Columbia, South Carolina. He said, "Come on, boys, I'm gonna take you to your mother." And that's how he took them back to Columbia. And they came on up.
They came up like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. They got here, and we all were so glad to see him, and everybody, because his family here. There's some kind of way they knew he was here. I don't know how they did it because it wasn't telephone like they were now. But they came over, and my uncle who took his wife down. His daughter was in the Philadelphia General. Now Philadelphia General, you've already heard that. That was the black folks hospital. You heard that. That was the truth. So they went over to see my cousin in the hospital. But my father, by that long trip, couldn't make it. So
he had a heart condition anyway.
So anyway, when they came back to the house, and I remember this good, everybody had heard about John Henry. That was my father. Our living room was full when I went upstairs. And early in the morning, my brother woke me. He said, "Joe," he said, "come go downstairs with me." With Mom. I said, "Okay." So I looked over there. My father was, I thought, sleeping. So my brother said, "Mom," he said, "Papa is sick. I think he's dead." I flew up those steps. My father died 24 hours, yes, 24, a little over, when he came here. And that's, of course, we remember a lot of things, but I remember that as being a sad, just seeing our dad, and he died.
There's a will, there's a way. A hard head makes a soft behind. Only the good die young. I've forgotten more than you'll ever know. Make sure you learn something new every day.
Yes, my name is Paul A. Turner. I was born in 1939 in South Philadelphia. The major event at that time was that my father delivered me on the floor of 1833 Reed Street. That my father was involved in a lot of things. And, back in the 30s, you had to work hustle in various areas. And this one time, he was late getting home, and he had kind of messed up the money, which happens sometimes. And he was walking across the South Street Bridge from West Philadelphia, and lightning hit the bridge, or hit near the bridge, and scared him so badly that he thought he heard the Lord saying, "John, you better straighten up." And so he took cigarettes out his pocket, threw them in the river, and he never smoked from that day on. Came home, and my mother was laying on the couch, and she was saying, "John, where were you?" And he said, "I'm having a baby." So my 2 sisters, I had 2 older sisters, they were running about doing things, and so they all got together, and they spread newspaper on the living room floor. And my oldest sister, who was 8 years older than I am, she got on the telephone, the corner telephone. We didn't have one in the house at that time. And the younger sister was relaying messages from the older sister, who had the Jefferson Hospital, on the phone. And she was telling my sister, Marguerite, who's 6 years older than I am, what to do. And Marguerite was coming, telling my father what to do.
So they were outside telephone on the corner.
On the corner.
Running back relay to the house.
That's right. And she, the neighbor saw my sisters and she said, "What's going on? What's going on?" He said, "My mommy's having a baby. My mommy's having a baby." And that she said, "Oh, well, let me get in there." She went in there and told my father, "Get out of here. You don't know what you're doing." And she delivered me with the help of my father. And then my oldest sister, by that time, had gotten the interns from Jefferson Hospital. And they came in and put the silver nitrate in my eyes and things of that nature. So this is what I'm learning this from my sister. And my father, he told me a little bit about it, but my sister told me. As a matter of fact, it was my sister told me most of the things of a historical nature from the Turner family. Reed Street in that day, we had a little house. I think the whole first floor was as big as this room here, and there were 2 bedrooms there was a shack in the back. My sisters and the 5 boys in the middle room, and my grandfather and my uncle in the front room, and my mother and father on the sofa in the living room. So then we moved in West Philly, and we didn't know what to do. We had 7 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and my grandfather, who was alive at the time living with us, he said, "Yeah, that bathroom is sure. I'm glad that we left that place, because every time we got up there, it used to grunt." I can remember as a little kid him saying that. We were about the 3rd or 4th family, black family, and they were all 3-story houses. But our house was bigger than most, because most just had 4 or 5 bedrooms, but we had 7 bedrooms. And the first time we had a bed by ourselves. You hear about the Jacksons, remember?
Yeah.
They always talk about how the Jacksons, talking about Michael Jackson, how they bunked up, but we had beds, finally, individual beds. And my brother Gene had a room all to himself. The Turner name came from Maryland. My grandmother, my father's mother, was an excellent cook. She was the chef at one time at the hotel on University of Penn's campus. See, that's basically where we grew up, on University of Penn's campus. And she was a chef. She was what they called the morning chef. And the morning chef prepared everything for supper. Her name was Gassaway, Gassaway. And shortly after slavery, my father's grandfather, his name was James Gassaway, and he was a cook. Now, he was born, as far as I can, right after slavery, and he was an accomplished cook. He opened up a catering service, and as you know, back in the late 1800s, despite the fact that we had been emancipated, if you were a caterer, you catered either to white people or to black people, and he catered to white people, using that money to expand his business. And who lent him the money, he told all of the people not to pay my great-grandfather, and they didn't pay him. And of course, my great-grandfather asked the man, he said, "They won't pay me. They were paying him before." And he asked the man who lent him the money, when asking him for the money back, he was asking him, "Won't you help me?" He said, "No, you want to be a big man, you want to be a businessman, so you have to learn the ways of a businessman." He says, "But the people won't pay me. My service is good." And so the person with whom he borrowed the money said, "Well, I'll tell you what. I'll take your daughter," who was my grandmother, and she waited on that family. And as my father told me this, because she was in service and never learned to read or write, worked in service, so that, that's what my father always called it, in service. And she, of course, was quite a cook, I guess she inherited that from her father.
Let the doorknob hit you where the good Lord split you. You can be as smart as a whip, as dumb as a doorknob, as old as dirt, as sweet as Georgia peach, or as naked as a jaybird.
I am a wife. I was born in Philadelphia in 1939, but my mother was from either Alabama or Georgia. Paul sometimes knows more about my history than I do.
They moved to Georgia.
They moved to Georgia. My grandfather and his brother owned quite a bit of land. Now, I don't know how, because my grandfather was the child of slaves. So it would be interesting to find out how he acquired the land. But during the time that they were living there, and at that point he was married, there was some kind of fight between his brother and someone white. And they knew that their lives were in danger. And so he pulled up and brought all of his children to Philadelphia. Okay, I lived in North Philadelphia. We lived on Fontaine Street, 1500 Fontaine Street. My grandfather, he was of course living with his family in North Philly too. That was girls' high school. At that time it was at 17th and Spring Garden.
Where Ben Franklin is now, that's where her father went to high school.
It was Central at that time.
Yeah.
I was the first one to go to college in my extended family. Graduated from that, elementary education. 1970, and they were already busing at that time. But I don't think that the neighborhood realized that these were the children that were going to infiltrate their area. But what I found out about Mifflin was that it was built specifically for the people who lived up the hill.
Where? Grace?
What street was that? Penn Street?
Yeah. Rendell, as a matter of fact, lived on the street.
And Grace Kelly family was in that area.
And they had complained to the Board of Education because they said they didn't have a school for their children. And so that school was built for them. And eventually they moved away. And the population of the school became less and less and less until they had to do something with it. They said there had rooms where there were only like 4 or 5 children in the room. So that's when they decided that they would have to do something to keep the school open. And at the time that that school was built, it was the most expensive building in Philadelphia. I think that was 1935 or so that school was built.
I was secondary education, industrial arts, and I started at Roosevelt Junior High School, and I taught there for 4 years, and then I taught for 6 years at Simon Gratz under Marcus Foster, and then I taught the last 22 and a half years at Martin Luther King as a department head. But jobs weren't that plentiful when I got there. Were only certain schools where black teachers taught, and you could just about like there Barrett was one and Vaux was another, and if a person said I taught in the late 50s and early 60s, and they were secondary, you said, whoa, where did you teach at Salzburger? Well, because that's how things were placed. And but I went to Roosevelt, which was, in my estimation, a fine junior high school. I enjoyed it. The job opportunities were not great. I was fortunate. Right after graduation, I passed the examination. I wasn't a great student while in college, but it seems like I was good enough to pass the exam because I came out number 1 on the list. you know. And then I went to Simon Gratz, and I was high on the list again. In 1970, there were no African American department heads in industrial arts, and 6 of us were appointed. I was not number one, but I was in the group. Initially, I was going to go into the administration, but I found that there was a need in instruction for the improvement of instruction, so I stayed at that level at Martin Luther King had there. But the job opportunities were just opening up when I came out in 1962.
I think we knew that we would not be able to go to certain parts of the city. And North Philly was where almost everybody went. We didn't go to Germantown. We may have gone somewhat to South Philly, but South Philly was very prejudiced. I did my student teaching in South Philadelphia. Okay. And I understand that they being the people in the neighborhood, had thrown all kinds of rocks when the first black teachers came there. And there were just 2 black teachers there when I was doing my student teaching. Paul, he was a freshman and I was a sophomore, but we, were the same age. And I used to come out on the campus and spread a blanket and picnic in hopes that he would come past. But he never did. He never did. I ended up seeing him at a dance. And then at the end of the semester, end of the year, before summer vacation, I needed a ride home, and I asked him if he would give me a ride in his lovely old beat-up car. And
1949 Plymouth.
we're talking about 1960 now. Yeah, 49. But it worked me, and I'm not going to complain. At one time, he told me that car was a garden because somebody had shot peas in it, and black-eyed peas.
Remember bean juice? And then, yeah.
And it was wet on the floor, and the beans grew, and, But anyway, we went together for about 3 years, and as time went on, Paul became more and more popular. He was a basketball star. He was a nice person, and he wanted to spread his wings. And then I was off campus because I was student teaching, and he was still there, and he wasn't calling me. And I was waiting for him to come home. And eventually I said, well, I guess that's it. And I ended up marrying somebody else. Okay. 20 years go by, and then we see each other again. And I guess talking to him, I felt comfortable because I felt like I knew him. Now he was much older by then, but I still felt as though I knew he was a good guy back then. Even though he wasn't as good to me as he could have been, but he was a good guy. And we ended up getting married in 1980. Yeah, he had 2 children. I had 2 children. And
8 grandchildren.
we have 8 grandchildren now, 1 great-grand.
Her grandfather's father, his name was Paul Turner. And I guess he looked at me once, the minute she introduced me to him, he looked at his eyes, popped open. He used to have a toothpick in his mouth. And he looked at me, but he didn't say anything. He was a man of very few words. I don't think I ever said more than 3 words to him. But when he came back, there he was.
Yeah, but he was talked to at home, and that's one of the things that I regret, that I didn't ask him all the things about when he was a young man and when he was a boy and what happened to the land that he had. Because I just don't think that they were able to sell that land and get out of there as fast as they seem to have needed to.
Yeah, they crossed, there was a bridge, Abbeville, Alabama. They crossed the river into Georgia,
But the Paul Turner comes around full circle for you. Your grandfather,
Yes, Yeah.
And now your husband,
Yes.
both named Paul Turner.
Yes.
That's
yes.
interesting. Well, that's a good spot to leave it right. Don't eat yellow snow. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Never be a day late and $1 short. Don't put the cart before the horse. Never look a good gift horse in the mouth.
My name is William Fassett. They call me Bill. I was born April 21st, 1937, 1250 South 22nd Street. I went to school, Landeth Elementary, which is on 22nd and Manton. That's right off of Federal Street. Went to junior high school, Barrett Junior High, that was the 16th and Wharton. Went to West Philadelphia High School, which is the 47th and Walnut. Friends of mine wanted me to go to Southern. I didn't want to go to Southern. Plus, one of the reasons I went to West Philadelphia High is I was in the swimming, and Southern was a school, I'm not sure, but I don't think they had a swimming team. Plus, they were known for chasing the black kids home all the time, so that's one of the reasons why I didn't go. And plus, a lot of my friends who I grew up with and who I swam with at the Christian Street Y went to West Philadelphia High for the swimming team. It's an OV cattle on 20th Street, Fitzwater, and we would go there and they would have dances and things, and that was like an Elks home. They had different affairs there, and on the holidays they would have parades. That was OV cattle. That was before I even knew who OV cattle was. Later on I found out who OV cattle was. In fact, he's from this area where he got murdered. I remember the Marion Anderson playground because when I was swimming for the Christian Street Y at that time, and also swam for Marion Anderson's team, but at that time they had this old pool, it was called McCoats. When McCoats was torn down and they built this Marion Anderson, beautiful Marion Anderson Center. And the day they built it, Marion Anderson was there and they dedicated to it. It was in the 50s sometimes. I was fortunate in a way when I grew up in South Philly. I got involved with the Boy Scouts and also the Christian Street YMCA. In fact, Frank Tick called me, we called him Tick, came out to my mother's house and talked her into letting us join the Y. And I was always a YMCA person ever since then. I'm talking about around 1947. And growing up in South Philly, you had gangs and stuff, but the fact that I was involved with different things with the Y, I could go across the tracks. And when I say going across the tracks, I lived on the south side of the tracks, and the YMCA was on the other side of the tracks, which was the north side. But the fact that myself, Ivan Wallace, and a lot of us swam and was active in the Y, we didn't have a problem. But there was always gangs in South Philly. You had to be very careful. And I used to hang on the corners once in a while. We had a corner we used to hang on, which is around the corner from Elaine on 22nd and Reed. It's called Mr. Johnson's. We all hung on that corner, talked about sports and everything. We would come out of scout meetings and go in that corner, and go in that store and get a hog, a 15-cent hoggie and a soda. And sit there, we'd stand there and just talk all night. Not all night, because we had to be home at a certain time. But that was one of the corners I used to hang on. On the corner thought they could sing, not me, but they were very protective of the women in the neighborhood. A lot of the guys had cars, but I had a father, he had a car. The closest I got to that car, that steering wheel was on the passenger side. I never got a car until I came out of the military and worked and got one. I actually worked 3 jobs at that time. I worked for the recreation department. Actually, I worked, this was after I got out of the service, I worked for the recreation department as a swimming instructor, and even before. But when I got out, I did that and some other little things, and drove a cab for a minute. Then I ended up getting hired at PTC at the time. It was in 1965 as a bus operator, trackless trolley. In 1965, it wasn't too bad because blacks had been hired to drive, but before then, during the Second World War, blacks just worked the track gang. They didn't do anything else. And the only reason why the blacks worked the track gang, they didn't have no choice. They couldn't do anything else. So when they wanted to drive, which is more money, some of the union men, the white union men, were against all that. And the reason is because they were making money under the table. They didn't want the blacks to get into that. So what happened was, it became a national thing because they went on strike. The blacks picketed, and they had to go to the Navy Yard to build the ships for the Second World War. And the fact that that strike went on like that, they stopped everything. So the government, from the president on down, sent a general here to talk to the union here, which was Local 234, to see what can be done about this, to get the blacks out there on the street working, driving the trolleys, or if they went against that, they would be drafted into the military. So rather than cause any more troubles, the people in the union, the white people in the union, decided not to do that, and they started hiring drivers. And the problem was that a lot of these guys were making money and putting it in their pocket as opposed to turning. That's one of the reasons why the company probably folded up. Because when you got on the bus in those days, you had a trolley. It wasn't any bus, it was trolleys. You'd have a person in the front and a person in the back. You would give the driver money, and he would pull this chain. And they had this big clock at the top of the trolley. Well, they would get on the trolley, hand the driver to change, and he would pull it. Well, if 5 people got on, he would only pull it 2 times. So the rest was going in their pocket, and they turned the money at the end of the day. So what happened was, the story was that a lot of those guys bought summer homes, sent their kids to college doing that. So that's another reason why they didn't want blacks on the trolley, because what they were doing. It's all been documented. Not that part of the story, but that's the story I got when I went to work. But of course, when I got there, they had been driving about maybe 10 years, the blacks. The games that we played in elementary school, well, first of all, we had skates. We would skate up and down the street. Then my mother bought me a bike. It was a Monarch. I remember that. Rode a bike. And then we would play half-ball. And half-ball is a pimple ball cut in half, and you use the long broomstick and you would hit it. It was called half-ball. And they would do it with hose ball also, hose. And then we would play marbles up against the curb and everything, right? Yeah. I remember in those days, you had the Iceman. He would come by every day with the ice, a big pick. It was a square block of ice, you buy it. Also remember, being that we were in an Italian neighborhood, the Italian guy would come by with homemade, well, it's Clorox, but they call it Javella water. And the Italian guy would go by and holler, Javella water, Javella water. The Italians made their own bleach. And the Italian guy, that's what he would do. The chicken stores all around South Philly and up 9th Street, you could go any place and get a chicken killed right away and take it home, which wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't see any of that. I don't think I could eat anything that I killed. I was squeamish about that, even in the military. I was with some guys, we were out in Texas, out in the desert in New Mexico, and we went hunting for rattlesnakes and rabbits. And of course, these were good old boys from Texas, which a lot of them were nice. We went out in the desert and shooting jackrabbits with the big ears and everything, and you shoot them and they kept on running. That's how strong they were. But I could never been a hunter, really. Fortunately, I didn't have to go into combat or nothing like that. I had good duty in the military, but I had some issues. There was a couple things that was really strange. Well, first of all, I got drafted, and I did my basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Then I did my second 8, what they call advanced infantry training, and I was praying it wouldn't be combat. I ended up being in a Redstone missile unit, which was only 3 in the world. 2 in Germany, and the one I was stationed in, which is Fort Sill, Oklahoma. We would support the overseas unit when they come over to support, to fire the missile in Oro Grande, New Mexico, what they call White Sands. We would support the overseas unit. But every summer, my unit would convoy or drive down from Fort Sill, Oklahoma to Dallas, Texas, to the state fair, right? So my first year there, My commanding officer came over to me and said, well, Bill, you can't go. Manny, this is 60, 61. I didn't ask him why. He said, I can't go, I can't go. You don't ask questions in the military. So I was a civilian for a whole week. I did what I wanted to do. I didn't even put on my uniform. I didn't have to. There was nobody there. Went down to mess hall and ate. The reason is because they were not going to put up a black man in one of those hotels in Dallas, Texas. Well, in my battery, in artillery they go by batteries, units, which was, I forget how many, 70 or whatever. I was the only black guy in there. I was a missile launcher crewman. I think I made E5 in 20 months. I was in the Southwest, which is almost as bad. Texas, Oklahoma. The Lomaxes is a family that owns the station WRD, Word, 900 AM, Anderson, and it's the only black station in the area, might be in the country. Well, the family that I know, the Lomaxes, are related to them. He started out with different clinics down in South Philly when we were coming up. In fact, they seem to think he's the one that got a lot of things started because he had clinics all over. Then he got out of the, I imagine he got out of the medical business and he got into the radio and he bought the station Word. But yeah, they are, the reason I know because this gentleman I know named Lomax, we had breakfast together a few years ago. I heard he passed and his name was Jesse Lomax. And I asked him, he said, yeah, they were cousins, Mr. Lomax. Mr. Lomax passed on too a couple of years ago. St. Simon had great dancers. Sam Reed, Buzzy Wilson, a lot of musicians, some of them have passed on today, who played. Georgie Woods had just came into Philadelphia back then. He used to MC the dances at St. Simon's back in the 50s. Okay, now, at that time my mother was sending my brother and I to St. Simon's. We used to go to Sunday school. We didn't go to the church part. And that's how we got involved with the Boy Scouts. Got involved with the Boy Scouts. The troop was 373. Back in the days when I was coming up, it wasn't even any rock and roll. I listened to jazz. Then rock and roll came on the scene. I wasn't into blues that much, but a lot of the jazz. That's why a lot of guys my age are into jazz, because this is pre-rock and roll. Then rock and roll came out, then everybody started listening to rock and roll. But then the Uptown Theater had all these different shows with Little Stevie Wonder, all the top groups during the 60s and the 70s came through there. The Uptown Theater, you watch 2 movies or a show, you can stay in and watch the other show. Now, maybe the second time they push you out, but you'd watch the show twice. But the Uptown was just a lot of fun. Actually, when I came home from the military, we were entitled to 6 months unemployment, which I took happily. And then I drove a cab for a year. Now, driving a cab for a year is like working any normal job for 10 years, what you go through. Exciting, but dangerous. I like to backtrack a minute, because when I was born in 1937, it was my mother, my father, my brother Richard, and myself, but there was another family. There was also my cousin Marion Blunden and Charles Blunden. We all lived in that same house at 1250 South 22nd Street. Around 1940, my father purchased his house a block away on 22nd and Manton Street. So my brother and I were raised in that house, but we were actually a block away from each other. But Thanksgiving and Christmas was great days. People would come and they'd have a big dinner, because my grandfather, Luke Blunden, was a well-known person. He knew a lot of people. I met a lot of people through him. Plus the fact that he got me waiting tables, I met a lot of people. But I found out from my father that early on, probably when we were young, a lot of people who were going to college would come and stay at the house. I didn't realize that until later. In fact, one of the people who used to come and visit my grandfather was General O.B. Davis, head of the Tuskegee Airmen. They were friends. My father just happened to mention this in passing, because he never talked about nothing. That shocked me. So I'm at a flea market. I picked up the book. Well, I knew about O.B. Davis's background, but I didn't know that part, that we come visit my of the Tuskegee Airmen, who eventually got his 4th star given to him by Clinton before he retired. Pop-Pop, we called him Pop-Pop, Luke Blunden. He was from a family who originally were here in this area. I traced back all the way back to 1800s. In fact, I was doing some research in genealogy, and I come to find out that the Blunden name, the male was Joseph Blunden, and the wife was Phoebe Blunden. They were born in 1820 and 1822 in Jersey. Then they came over here, from what I gather, and they had a son named Joseph Blunden. And he had 4 kids. One was Luke, which was my grandfather, Leonarda, Lena, and David. That was my grandfather. Luke was my grandfather. And he was born on 16th of Lumber in 1889. So that's the old South Philadelphia family. The 7th Ward, W.B. Boyd talks about, which ran from about 6th and South all the way down to Broad Street. You had blacks living across Broad Street, but they were well-to-do. They were, believe it or not, they were caterers, and they were well-to-do. In fact, there was one black who won the first black Olympic medal. I forget his name is John something. You could Google it. But he lived on the other side, next to Penn University. His name escapes me now, but it's John. I forget. But he won the first. He's the first black man to win Olympic gold in track and field before Jesse Owens. On my father's side, I did a little research, but I couldn't get too much information on it because my father never talked about it. He was born in Eastern Shore, Maryland, Berlin, which is a few miles right below Ocean City, Maryland. I didn't know any of this until I got older. It seems that his mother came up here with his oldest sister, and my father was born 1911. I think they came up around, he was around maybe 10 or 11. That's they met my mother. But the reason I think she came here is because her older brother, which is Reverend David Henry, was the second pastor at Tinley Temple Church after Reverend Tinley died. I didn't know a lot of these things until I became an adult. Well, Tinley Temple Church, it used to be called a Calvary Church or something, but they moved over on Broad Street. It's probably the first black church on South Broad Street. Reverend Tinley was known for writing a lot of the spirituals. He was well known for that. But my father, that's the church he always went to. I didn't even know him. All I saw was this picture in the house. My father never talked. When I came up, my brother was the artist, my younger brother. Right? Everybody said he was the artist. So I went to the Philadelphia College of Art under the VA. I went there for a minute. My vocation, I was planning on being a graphic artist. It was, they called me in the office one day and said I couldn't go anymore because they didn't want to accept the money from the VA. But I found out that a lot of the GIs would get their first check and never go back to school. So that took care of that for me. But it wasn't a waste. I enjoyed it, that little bit I had. And then I found out that you really had to be connected to be a graphic artist. Now today it might be a different thing, but to be a graphic artist, you got to be connected. So I just kept painting. You know, I enjoyed it. And but I really got serious because a couple friends of mine asked me to exhibit some work at the Kimmel Center. These are all graduates from art school because I work with a lot of artists. For the last year and a half, my work has been up at the Kimmel Center at the lower level. So what it does is everything, I believe in that saying, everything happens for a reason. I'm actually painting more because they want to see more things. Okay. So basically the medium I work in is acrylic and watercolor, although I do some pencil, graphite as they call it, and some charcoal. The opportunity for blacks in the arts, not just painting, it's still an uphill battle. The art, this keeps me busy.
And you're good at it.
And I appreciate it.
Don't bite the hand that feeds you. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Cold hand, warm heart. Pretty is as pretty does.
My name is Leon Berg. I was born January 2nd, 1937 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My mother was named Pearl Lotman. My father's name was Lafayette Dickerson. And I was born in Ellenwood, which is a suburb of the city of Philadelphia. In 1939, we moved to 1406 South 20th Street, where I resided till I left home. I went and attended John Barton Senior High School out in Ellenwood, and that was my formal education. And then later on, I attended barbering school to become a barber. I mostly study and practice on black hair, but through the years, 2 years after I got out of school, I went down to a Southern Home for Children, and I cut all kind of kids' hair. But they didn't have a haircut so long, they didn't care whether I knew how to cut or not. They wanted a haircut. So that's what I did there. And he gave me $1 haircut, Southern Home for Children at the end of Broad Street, yeah. So I did that. I worked there for about, till I got too big for it. And $1 wasn't enough, you know. And the kids was, you know, it was mischievous and whatnot, but it was good practice. That's what I used. I cut it on the corner of 20th and Reed and Reedy Barbershop, and then a few years after I got my license in March 2nd, 1962, I moved into my own barbershop and opened my shop up on the corner across the street from where I practiced at, 20th and Reed, and I stayed there for 50 years cutting hair. Leon's Barbershop. It was a neighborhood shop, and I had coffee and donuts in the morning. We had music in there. We had television in there, and like I said, the barbershop are the last stronghold in the black community. No alcohol, yeah, men's talk. Like ladies do in a beauty shop, or men do in a barbershop, men talk community, where they have elections, political viewpoints, and they had round table discussion. We had coffee, Danish, to enhance the whole conversation. And we got a lot out of it. Sometimes the politician would come in. I enjoyed the neighborhood much better in the 50s before, when they had segregation. When we integrated, we lost the impact of the community because a lot of people went out of the community. But long it was segregated, everybody came into the black neighborhood for the tailors, haircuts, and that's the way it was. When we segregated, then the segregation broke up the neighborhood a little bit, and a lot of the business shut down. White business started coming in, and they divided us. We had our own movies, own doctors, own dentists, and it was more tight knitted, and very clannish. And then even on South Street, we had the movies was, you know, we had a Dixie, we had the Glue, we had the Royal, and we didn't have to go into Center City. So segregation, we was nice, close-knit community. Especially in South Philly, because in South Philly, it ran from, in my opinion, from South Street to Snyder, then from Broad Street to 33rd Street, and then that whole compound area, we knew everybody. If you didn't know everybody, somebody knew somebody who knew somebody that connected us all together anyway. It was very clannish. We had racial problems as far as going down to Moore Street, on the other side of Moore Street, which was primary, from Moore Street back to Snyder Avenue. Was more of a white client. A couple of times when I was trying to start a paper route, I went from Reed Street, Dixon, Tassett, and Mars. When I went on Moore Street, I was treated much different, and people didn't want no paper. What you want here? When I knocked on the door, asked to serve the papers. And I knew that I would cross my boundary, so I kept my paper route within the area of from 17th Street to 22nd, and from Mars Street back down to about Washington Avenue. I would deliver the evening bulletins that was out that time. They're now extinct because television came, and television, the bulletin bought the television channel 10, and the paper shut down. Oh yeah, the chicken store that we had the Lucas at 22nd and Reed, and we had another chicken store at 18th and Garrett, Chubby Checker, that was down on 9th Street, 9th and Washington Avenue. That's where Chubby Checker worked at. He became a famous singer back in the late 50s and 60s, and he went to, been popular all over the world. My father was employed with Scott Brothers, and he was a helper on a truck that delivered telephone equipment all along points of outside the city. 40 years, and my mother, we had 8 sisters and brothers. It came out of a large family, and after we all were in school and settled, she got a job in the comic book factory. We didn't have a car until the late 60s. And we did well, and the trolley was easy going, the subway was easy going. As a child, well, we would always had roller skates at Christmas time. You always got skates back in the 40s and early 50s. And then from roller skating, it took me a long time to get a bike. So finally, I was served papers and I got a lot of customers and I won the prize. I cheated a little bit and I got this bike, and I was like 16 years old, which was kind of old. So I got my bike when I was about 16. And as far as my athletic ability, in Barbershop, I ran cross country. I couldn't run far, and I never made no higher than the second team. So I didn't partake much in the sports. So my sport career was short, and I wasn't much of an athlete. Telling the world was, "What are you doing New Year's Eve?" and songs of that style, and it was real popular. Yeah.
Maybe it's much too early in the game. Oh, but I thought I'd ask you just the same. What are you doing New Year's? New Year's Eve.
Mr. Black was a funeral parlor next door to us. So I had to work on Fridays night sometime when they have funerals. People have funerals on the weekend. So therefore, when they had dance at St. Simon's, St. Charles, it was on Friday and Saturday. I missed out a lot of that. You had to be home by 10 o'clock. And if I did stay out late, my sister would leave the door open for me to come in, but sometimes my father would catch me and I would get severe punishment, sneaking in the house. We could not bring no street conversation into the house. No, that was unacceptable in the house. No. And yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. The language, yeah. Yeah. And we went to Sunday school, St. Simon's, and they gave us 3 cents to put in. We had to be there at 1 o'clock, and I would walk slow, so I would get there late. And also, one thing I remember about St. Simon's, my father didn't have much money, and they bought us sneaks, me, my brother, Lafayette, my oldest brother, and my brother Donald. And we went into church, the boys made fun of us, said, "Here come the Bird brother sneaking in with sneaks on." Because during that time, people wore shoes, and we didn't have no money, and we went to Kirsten, a shoe store. And Mr. Kirsten said, "I like you, you're my favorite customer." And he sold my father 3 pairs of shoes sneaks for $5. So playing a little bit of baseball, I sit in the second base, and one half of the sneaks came off, and the other half stayed on. So that's my experience. Not having enough money, being poor black. Or you carry your sneaks to school on the back of your shoulder, and then you would change from your shoes into your sneaks. Even if your shoes had a hole in it, you put paper in them shoes to keep walking. Not wear sneaks to school. No. Sneaks didn't get popping until about the 60s, I guess. And then I come to find out my son called the sneaks Bobos. And I didn't know what Bobos were. They were a cheap grade of sneaks. So they started naming and labeling these sneaks, and sneaks became real popular. And pretty soon sneaks took over the shoe industry. Sunday morning, we always get dressed, put on a clean shirt and have breakfast together, and you had dinner together on Sundays. And what broke up that day was going to the movies on Sundays. And that broke up the family dinner in my house. I was the 3rd child, and I was part of the should have known better. Oh yes. You should have known better. And we had to do the cleaning. Somebody had to do make up all the beds when we came from school. Somebody had to clean up the front room. And the worst job was somebody had to do the floor every day. And you change every week. And if the house wasn't clean right, my father would clean rich white folks' home on Saturday. He got $8 in car fare. And he would come home sometime and the house wasn't cleaned up right. He'd wake us up 4 o'clock in the morning and come downstairs to the GI party. You gonna clean the floor the way he cleaned that white folks' house. That's a GI party. And you crying, he had a strap in his hand, if I clean the white folks' house right, y'all gonna clean my house right. That was a form of discipline we had, which was the truth. I knew Sherman. I was on 20th and Reed, which is on the other side of the track, and this girl I met, she lived on Kimball Street. And I was going to take her out to see the House of Wax, and I met Sherman Hensley. And he told them guys to leave me alone because, see, I had no business over there. The horse stable there at Reed Street. And he rented horses out with the horse and wagon for the guy to go junking. They sold ice on it. The racial problem, you had to go through the white neighborhood to get this tobacco. And once they start changing, if you don't get across Broad Street, you were in trouble. Obama, a black man in my day and age, will become the president of the United States of America. A black man, right? And my mother didn't see it, but I was able to see what my mother couldn't see. When Barack Obama came, he had all the things I liked about him. He was educated, he was stern, Harvard, law school, did everything right. And if you do right, gotta do the rest.
Don't count your chickens before they hatch. You can't push a wet noodle. Always have a plan B. Have a bird in the hand and one in the bush. Never put your eggs all in one basket.
My name is Magnolia Jane White Highsmith. Okay. Any birthday? My birthday is January 17, 1922.
And where were you born?
I was born in a little place called Haygood House, South Carolina. Don't ask me what's there, because there's nothing there.
Tell us, do you know how your family got to Philadelphia?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
My mother was in Philadelphia working, and she had asked her sister to bring us to Philadelphia to live, because there was no school there that I could go to in South Carolina, and she wanted us to have a good education. I was about four years old.
They know.
I went to O.V. Cato School on Sampson Street in West Philadelphia.
Okay. I was asking because there's an O.V. Cato lodge down South Philly,
Yeah.
And we were talking about that yesterday. Do you know anything about
The man?
The man.
Yes.
What do you remember about him?
Well, not too long ago, he was in a paper, a magazine, telling about his life. Somebody was writing an article on him.
About his life.
Yes. He's a very smart man.
And I didn't realize there was a school named after him.
Nobody knows about that little school. It's a little school on Sampson Street. I think when I went there, it only went up to around the 3rd grade.
He was killed in a riot.
I think she was going to say it.
And when you were in high school, what was your major?
I took home economics, and I'm glad I needed it, because as a child, I was cooking for the family. Just because my sister, the father asked her to cook once, and nobody had got enough to eat, so he said, no, you take that job.
Okay.
And so I did. I went to the store with this 25 cents and bought enough food for dinner.
And when you took home economics in high school. Did you go on to college or
And took it also.
and where did you go to college?
Cheney,
Cheney.
East State.
Okay. And the fact that home economics is so important. I know you have some feelings about the fact that they are eliminating it slowly out of
Made a big mistake. Big mistake.
and eliminating.
Yes, because they really need it. They need to know how
Expound
to.
on that.
They need to know how to buy food, know when food is fresh, you know. And they need to learn how to budget. That's important.
And how to sew.
Oh,
Hem a
yes.
skirt.
Oh yeah.
Economics
Home
course.
economics is the best course. And every girl should have to take it, you know. We learned a lot.
Can you remember what kind of hobbies you had as a child? What kind of games you played? That kind what did you do in your spare time?
Oh, jacks. I love jacks. We rode the bicycle up and down the street. We couldn't go off the block. We had to stay right there, you know. And jump rope, double dutch. I could jump double dutch. And is there anything else we did? The can, yeah. Kick the can and run and hide. When that city light came on, you better be sitting on the steps getting ready to walk in the door. You weren't allowed out that night. College, I didn't date nobody. I didn't. Did I? Did
You go on a prom? That's walking in.
Yeah, they had proms. What do you mean? I probably didn't go. I don't remember it. Yeah, I did. Yes, I did. I went on prom. And we rode the streetcar or the bus to wherever it was. Wasn't no cab. We didn't have no cab money. Wasn't any buses would take us from 40th and Filbert to South Philly. I don't remember seeing black teachers
In high school.
in high school.
But junior high and elementary,
I don't think I saw any in elementary school.
really? Okay.
Because I went to, my elementary school was over on Penn's campus. And it was and the kids came from West Philadelphia, lower part of West Philadelphia. And some kids came from South Philly. North Carolina on the train, and we had to change planes, train in DC, and get on one and ride in a little a car that was in the back, I guess. That was the first time and the only time I rode on a train at that time.
But they made you move
Yeah, you had
into
to
a
move.
black car.
Yeah. Well, my mother came up north because she had a girlfriend that had a job and found a job for my mother. My mother was up there, I don't know how long before we went to, before we came. Here we lived on Sampson Street. Very nice neighborhood, and the people next door were friendly. And we had an apartment, I guess. We couldn't own the house, the whole house. But we had room for my sister and my cousin and my mother and father. Yeah, it's an apartment, I think. All of it. I enjoyed all of it.
How about your fabulous husband?
Is that where you met your husband in college?
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna tell him tonight in my prayers.
Yeah, I did beat him there. He,
Let me get your daughter in this picture.
How could you not forget that?
Okay. I didn't know we gonna have Karen Highsmith, the daughter of this beautiful lady, to come around.
No,
and get, no, you did.
How you forget Daddy?
That was the most fun.
That should have been the best thing.
What?
When you met your
Oh, I didn't know she wanted me to talk about that.
She said what was the most. She could do
Oh, let me tell you.
I want you to.
Oh, she
I'll
won't
tell
talk
you.
now.
I want you to be in it too.
I met him.
it. Yes.
I went to a party. My sister was already in Cheney. So I went to visit her. And I'm on the floor talking to somebody, and he walks up and he said, "Is that your sister? I'm gonna marry her." And Penny said, "With my dead body." Yep, so that's how I met Charles Highsmith.
Army.
Yeah, he was in the army.
They took him out.
And he went to, first of all, Charles Highsmith left Cheney University and went to Tuskegee, Alabama to be a Tuskegee airman. I've forgotten just how long he stayed there, but before they allowed the Tuskegee airmen to be trained with any other place that was teaching them to fly, you know. I mean, they're allowed to go and fly with the white people, but they didn't want to do that anyhow. They wanted to stay in Tuskegee. But so either he had a choice of going to learn to fly with the white folks, or going to something else. So he went on to officers candidate school.
Capabilities of women during your time of, because at one time women couldn't even get a bank account.
Oh, really?
Right, and unless they had a husband's signature.
I believe
You never went through that because you married right in college, out of college.
Mm-hmm. Right out
Yeah.
of college.
Yeah. So you may not have
it.
experienced some of that.
His signature probably was on it.
Mhm.
What?
Yeah.
It probably was on it.
Yeah, anything
Yeah.
that she would have done because she got married straight out of college would have had him. But if you tried to, women, I have been to the bank with my mother when she was trying to open a bank account to get your husband's signature.
Oh.
Okay?
He took care of all that, you didn't know.
Hmm?
He took care of all that.
Yeah.
We never had to fill our gas tank when we were home teaching.
This is important. That's a strong man.
That's what I'm saying. And
Yeah, he
as long
was.
as I was in that house doing what I was supposed to, mine was filled too, and the car was cleaned off on snow days. She didn't even know how to. I had to teach her how to pump gas when he passed. She didn't know nothing
I
like
certainly
it.
didn't.
She ain't never been to the gas station. Daddy did it for us.
That's a strong man.
He was a
better
good man.
tell
I
him.
was
Yeah.
very fortunate. Good.
Right.
You shared.
I was a good mother.
Yeah, I didn't say you weren't a good
But
mother.
she knew how to do everything at home economics was necessary to do, keep that house running,
That's
right?
That's right.
She
Good
did.
team.
I taught you to be clean.
I know. Who taught you to bring down? You know how big that house was.
You had your own room, your own bath up there. Better not come up there and find it dirty. My son used to, when you move in a house, people come, they want to see the house, you know. And I took my girlfriends, I took them upstairs, and I showed them Karen's room, Pam's room, Charles's room, and Charles' room had this comforter, and he had it high up, and I said, mm-hmm. So I snatched it apart, and it was all dirty clothes. I threw it all on the floor, went on downstairs with the people.
How did he react when he came back and saw that?
He picked it up. He knew better than to say anything.
He was hiding it all the time. He took to stuff it in there like that. He
Yeah.
couldn't put it away.
He was a character.
Why don't you tell him how Daddy taught us the value of a dollar?
How did he do it?
Sunday nights we got our envelopes for the week for school.
Oh, well, that's between him and them. I
It
didn't.
was our allowance.
Yeah, I know.
And it was for your tokens or your lunch money, and if it was going Friday, oh well. One time I didn't have any for choir, I cried. Because I wanted to go to choir rehearsal Friday night, and spend on candy or something. And he was teaching us
the value of $1. It was, and the budgeting too.
Yeah, and then y'all got angry with him because he used to make you eat a sandwich, fix your sandwiches.
No. I enjoyed my peanut butter sandwich. But I'm saying, what that money was put in that envelope was the last week. And when I went to college, I took my same metal box and had my envelope.
It's stuff. Yeah.
And my roommates Friday night, they didn't have money. I said, come on to the bank, it's open. I'd open up that case. They were sick. We hate you. Excuse me? Oh, can I borrow $5? That's true. Come on, because my bank was open all the time. It was 9 o'clock on a Friday night. But he taught us how to.
Don't get me to line. Always wear clean underwear. Never a borrower nor a lender be. A chain is as strong as its weakest link. Every shut eye ain't sleep, and every goodbye ain't gone.
It is to work in a factory. My mother worked in a clothing factory, and she told me that there were certain machines that were considered as technically too advanced for black people to use.
I believe that.
So what we know as the mirror machine, that's the machine that cuts off the edge and gives a straight stitch machine, that black people were not allowed. They could be in the factory, they're working on the regular machines, but there are certain machines which paid more money. They paid more money, but black people were not allowed to use.
I came here specifically to talk to Bill about something I didn't learn until we became adults. Bill and I were in the Boy Scouts together, and we used to camp out in a place called Stratford, Pennsylvania.
Stratford, yeah.
Yeah, we used to get on it. We used to camp. We used to actually camp in this remote place with a stream running through it. We'd take baths in the streams and everything.
Stratford and also Sellersville.
It's Sellersville, that's actually correct. The most interesting thing. That land that we camped on was really sacred land.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, do you remember there was just one black family there?
That's right.
And that black family had a deed. And the deed was signed by William Penn.
Oh, my
Really?
And I learned this later on because of, folks that I know that lived in that area.
Right.
And all of that area up there now, they actually stole from this eminent domain.
Yeah.
Those $100 to $200 to $500,000 houses.
Yes.
They were actually stolen from this man.
Yeah.
Actually, that land was worth several $100 million, and through eminent domain, they got those houses. I said, "Now I know Billy didn't know that, and I didn't learn it."
Yeah.
But what you're saying is so important because there was a lot of land that was actually taken from black families that not necessarily through eminent domain, but through all sorts of trickery.
Well, same thing with Lamont.
That's
Same
right.
area up Lamont.
That's right.
Queen lives in Lamont. She knows about that. Tell us what
history
you
of
know about
Lamont.
Lamont.
Yeah, well, my house is
Yes.
where the prison was.
Yes, yeah.
In Lamont, and the Christian Mott,
Yeah.
a Quaker.
Yeah.
She allowed the Christian Mott. She allowed the soldiers after the war to buy the lands cheaply because she was appalled at how they were treated during the war. And I tell everybody that they can say they live in Elkin Park, or they can say Lamont or Melrose Park. I opt to say Lamont because that's where my folk, the first black army in Pennsylvania, was trained to die. The Buffalo Soldiers.
Camp William Penn.
Camp William Penn.
Grandfather didn't say, he would say, pack your bag. I packed my little suitcase. We went on what they call a bull feed. And McAllister handled serious dinners. I'm talking about 3,000, 4,000 people.
Wow.
And he had a big, we would get in buses, and he would take us to Trenton to political dinners, Atlantic City. I worked Atlantic City plenty of times in the winter, political dinners, Convention Hall in Atlantic City. And the last one I remember, which really stuck in my mind, was one of McAllister's big jobs when John F. Kennedy was running for president. I was working for McAllister then, and he had a political dinner at the Convention Hall. And one of the entertainers was Sammy Davis Jr. So while we were working in back, John Kennedy came back out and spoke to us and everything and waved. And that was the 3,000 dinner. And then that following week, I would go to the movies and I'd see it on the news. I would actually see the jobs I worked at as a kid on the news in the theaters.
But this was a debutante ball. I had a picture of it, but I don't know what happened to it. But it was, we had to get dressed up, and the boys had to escort us, and we were presented as debutante, the cotillion type.
That was your coming out.
We used to sew for that. We used to sew for them.
Yeah,
And
and I don't know, one of my brothers took me, okay? I don't know which one it was.
They didn't let me in the cotillion.
Okay.
I was too brown.
Well,
That's very true.
Let's
That's
talk
very,
about
the
that.
paper bag
What we're
test.
talking about here is reality
Paper bag.
of what life was
Paper
like
bag test.
later in our
correct.
early lives.
Yeah.
So the paper brown test,
Yeah.
where churches,
Yeah.
cotillions, certain organizations
Yeah.
would not allow you in if you were dark, if you were too dark.
right.
That's right.
And in all actuality, when you speak of that, when I was asked to be in the cotillion, it was because I could sew.
Yeah, that's right. She
And
was a
I-
great seamstress.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
Lord.
Elaine was.
they needed me to do
Yeah.
some things for
Yeah.
other people, and so
Yeah.
by the way,
Yeah.
you can do this too.
Yeah.
But because I was sewing, there was a girl in the cotillion group, her name was Kia. Her mother and father were very aristocratic, and I
Kia.
remember the name, her name was
Green?
Kia. Yes,
Kia Green?
she
Let
was
me tell
in
you
that.
something. I don't know why they was decided, because Mr. Green was he did bellboy stuff, not bellboy, down on the airport.
Oh, he was a bellhop.
Yeah, you know, but let me tell you.
Like a red hat.
Yeah,
Yes,
red
yes,
cap.
But that was
exactly.
considered as a very good job.
That's
That's
absolutely
true.
right.
That was
Cat.
considered as
Just
a
like
very good
catering
job.
was back in the
And
day.
Yeah.
he came from the
See,
suburbs.
that's what
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
Because there were certain jobs
Yeah.
that were considered as classy jobs to
Yeah.
have
At
because
the
they were
time.
secure
Yeah,
at that
that's correct.
time.
Yeah.
So bellboy was one, a red hat,
Yeah,
red
red
hat
hat.
reporters,
And then
Pullman
they-
boys.
and the catering. The fact that our generation, we are one, two, at the most 3 generations removed from slavery time. Why do you think that the families did not share that information on their first level my grandmother would refuse to talk about what happened? She was a product of what raped by a white man. And she refused to talk about it because she hated the white blood in her. And so nobody in the family knew why she looked so different from everybody else. We just had to assume, and she never would discuss it. But we found out now, we know what happened, we know who he was. But at that time, she would not talk about it. But we did know that she had brothers and sisters who looked like her and could pass for white. And she would tell us to call them Uncle Jim or Uncle Pink or whatever. And we really didn't know how they were connected. And there were other people in the neighborhood that were we were told to call cousins. My mother said, "This is my cousin." But the mother, when I asked, "How is she your cousin?" They didn't know. Well, come to find out, this man was planting his seed at all sorts of places all over this little town. So they knew who they were. But then the next generation has no idea. We don't know a lot. Do you find the same thing in your family?
Absolutely. My
Okay.
thing is this.
Queenie?
We still have a problem looking at what we've gone through. We still don't want to discuss it in many instances. But my mother's mother, her last child was by the white man. And in those days, they had no choice. If the white man wanted to go with them or whatnot, they couldn't say no. So
my father didn't believe.
and so my grandmother, when the baby was born, my last uncle, it was the white man's baby, and his wife out here brought my grandmother a plate of food. And when she ate that food, she was gone. I don't know if she left that day or she died the next day after the baby was born. I now guess you had to see the baby, and the baby looked white, and he never took my grandfather's name. They named him Vaughns. The Vaughns were white folk. But those are some of the things that we had to go through as women. We had no control over our body, and the men couldn't protect us. And to a man, to me, it was very heartbreaking that he would have to know that somebody done tapped his wife, and he couldn't do nothing about it. Well, it's just heartbreaking, and they didn't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about the things that have happened to us now, you know, because some of us went through some mess too.
Paul and I went to visit a prison. He says in Mississippi, I can't remember the name of the prison. But the point I'm making is that right after slavery, if a white man wanted a black woman, she was not allowed to refuse him.
That's right.
And if she did, she was put in jail for life.
Ooh.
So they had, in the jail, they had a lot of names.
Was it in Mississippi?
Yeah, in
I
Mississippi.
can't think. It figures. It has a Middle East name.
Like Algiers.
Algiers.
Oh, Algiers.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Algiers. They call it a gated community. And it's so remote that they don't even worry about people escaping because of the swamp.
Wasn't that the way it was done back in those times? You had absolutely no recourse. You couldn't get, if it was asking for anything, you couldn't get it. They did this openly. And it's taking a woman and women and children being born, and they really couldn't talk about it.
And there's a saying, I used to kid a lot of friends of mine. I said, the only reason they came up because the mule died. But that's not really the reason why you came up. If anybody's been to the Black and Wax Museum, they would know why we came up. Everybody seemed to think it was hard work. It was what you went through in the South, but there was more to it than that. And in Harlem, in the early 20th century, 1900s, they had a flag that they would hang outside of Harlem. They only would hang it if somebody was killed or hung. Well, that flag was up all day and every day. So my point being is that the North wasn't that great, but at least you had a better chance of living. See, it wasn't for economic reasons. A lot of people came up. I know if I was in that situation, I'd have came up yet.
I want to introduce you all to Larry Smallwood, who is popping in.
You don't have to introduce me. That's Noah right there. I know him.
You know him. Larry, I told you before I warned him that you were coming in a short time.
You warned him?
Yes. I warned him, okay?
Okay.
But before we start, I want you to tell them why you're in such a hurry today, because of the film fest.
Oh, yeah.
The film fest. They may not all know about it.
Yeah, they're calling.
Larry has been doing the Film Fest for almost 30 years, right?
This is our 39th year.
30, all right.
My take on Roots, he has every right to do it. I have no qualms about him making this his vehicle. He's used both Africa and United States as locations, Louisiana, and he went to West Africa. He's the executive producer. It's his money. Okay, so he put up the money for this, just like Lee Daniels put up the money for Empire with his partner. So for me, as a producer and writer, I think it's great that we can choose to do what we want to do with our subjects. Me, I just love the idea that African American entrepreneurs can bankroll our own projects the way we want to do it, and make the studios come after us because they need our audiences. It was WFIL, and they were down on Art Street back then. So we challenged their license. This challenge went to court, and we won. I wrote up the brief, and John Simpkins, who was a classmate of mine at Lincoln, he did the presentation. The ship was at first contentious, and it wasn't throwing rocks and stuff. We had a solid challenge. We went to the FCC. The FCC upheld the challenge in court, and after that, we sat down and said, okay, where do we go from here? What do we want to do? My contention was we needed to have a platform that would give African American and other minority groups an opportunity to have their programs on air in prime time. So one of the outcomes of that was Visions. We created Visions. I recruited Vernon Odom. I recruited Lisa Thomas Laurie right out of college to get more African American presence on air in the driver's seat. All of the folks that you see there now are the result of that effort. I now I was chairman of the advisory board for 3 terms over a period of about 12 years. Now management brings me in to consult, advise on community issues and so forth. The owner of the restaurant, the owner of the club, the owner of the Berean Savings and Loan, or the board, Zoar Savings and Loan, none of these places exist anymore. The Elks, Hobson Reynolds on Ridge Avenue, all of these guys worked together, and they had a fund that they had every month. Who needed some help? Didn't matter whether you owned a bar or whether you owned a hotel. And the brothers owned hotels. I think the only one there are 2 that still exist. The one on Carlisle on Poplar Street between 15th and Broad. All right?
Yeah.
And the other one, Moon on Westminster Avenue. Blue Moon. These guys, and that's where we went. Now, during the summer, like right now, everybody be down Atlantic City, getting ready for the summer. So there was a pool of money that they put together and gave to the guys in Atlantic City. Because the guys in Atlantic City had their group. And it was about 10 of them. When Johnny died, Johnny Ripley.
Go ahead.
Some of the guys lost a lot of the connection
Okay,
with each other, because one of the other guys, 2 of the other guys who were part of that group were Carl and Blake. Carl and Blake were partners, and they owned about 20 or 30 dry cleaners in North Philly and West Philly. And everybody went to them, but what put them out of business was when the Koreans came, they had the plants that processed the chemicals and all, so they were the final source, and that kind of put Carl and all of the guys that were in the black cleaners out of business. And then the Koreans did what the black guys were doing earlier. They consolidated. They took all of their resources and put it into one pool, and then everybody fed from that pool. But we don't have that now. One of the big differences that I've seen is that the most affluent of African Americans are not collectivizing. They don't work as a team. They work for the interests of their own entity, as opposed to the guys in mine and your era. When we walked on Columbia Avenue on a Saturday night, you didn't have to go no place else. If you walked on 52nd Street, or you went down on Lombard Street, before they built all the townhouses, we had that because there was a sense of not just unity, but there was a sense of you have to unify, you have to do this. You've got at least 4 no, let me up that. You have at least 10 African Americans who are worth $1 billion or more, and that doesn't include Oprah Winfrey. I'm not talking about entertainers. The wealthiest guy, his net worth is about $7.5 billion. He's in Chicago. Media, all media stuff. We've got more, and Paul can attest to this. We've got more guys and women in corporate America, not just 6 figures, in 7 figures. And the interest, you know, they talk about unity, but their ties are so, you know, bound by who they work for that they can only extend themselves so far without having that tie cut.
How did the drug culture slow down the economic of the black man?
Killed it. Killed it. The worst thing that the drug culture has done, it's incapacitated our will as a people.
Knowledge is the new currency, not money.
Right.
And the black man has not developed his educational, his thinking and reason to stay abreast with the white community.
Well, he hasn't taken advantage of what was given him.
Right.
You know, we didn't have to take everything to succeed from white America. We already had that. It's what we didn't take advantage of that was given to us.
When the oppressed are no longer oppressed, they take on the attribute of the oppressed instead of appreciating.
Absolutely.
Where they get just like the man.
Absolutely.
And my other thing right now is whatever you can visualize with your subconscious mind, you can achieve that. But if you can't see nothing, what can you achieve? If we ever feel good about ourselves, we off the hook.
You gotta be in the mix to see how bad it is. We have suicide rate in this country of 2 million attempts and completed suicides every year. In this city, we've got 94,000 African American youth under the 18 who are homeless. This creates a huge psychological gap and burden on the rest of us, not only to try to take care of these kids, but to try to find answers to prevent this homelessness from happening. The crime, the violent crime is a direct outburst of anger, frustration, and the sense that I can't escape.
Of what was it that our age group got as youngsters that these are not getting, and why?
Well, one of the things, there are two phenomena that are brand new, not only for African Americans, but for American society as a whole. The one phenomena is the detachment of individuals to families. There is a move afoot that says, I don't need not only family, I don't need religion. So when you don't have a sense that you came from something, then you won't feel an attachment to something. One of the phenomena is that we have an economy of children. Women, young women, particularly our women, Hispanic women, low income, poor, have children not because they're creating families. The other phenomenon is the daycare centers. We have kids now who can go into daycare at birth. The mother doesn't see them for more than 5 hours a day. And when she does see them, it's in a rushed and hurried situation. She drops that kid off, that child. She doesn't see that child probably until late in the afternoon, if then. And that child grows up in an environment that says, this is not my family, these are just people I live with. So the sense, this also I've seen breeds an anger. I've never seen so many young, angry men and women who've grown up in that environment because they feel that they have been put aside and discarded, even though the daycare center may be great, may give them all of these things, but it doesn't give them the attachment of family. It doesn't give them that sense that builds self-worth and value. We see so many kids who feel devalued because of the circumstance that their parents put them in. I've never seen so many 1 and 2 2-year-olds who fight their parents. You see them on the street, and I'm angry, and they fight. They come out fighting. They come out of the womb fighting, belligerent, ready to go to war. You know, and it's a dangerous situation because there's so many.
But it's a culture.
A culture. How does a culture feed itself? How does it sustain itself? Most, if not all, cultures sustain themselves by ideas. And those ideas then become plans for things. Country that is drugged out, and if something isn't done in the next 10 years, we will fall as a nation. Looking at what we are as a culture, we are a drug culture, period. So we got to start there. And it's not just with illicit drugs. Most of our drug is prescription drugs. We are dependent as a nation on prescription. Some of it is good. I take a prescription drug, you know. Some of it is good. But some of the dependencies that it creates makes us vulnerable as a people to everything that comes down the pipe. So when small groups, this is how tribes become nations. This is how tribes become nations. You know, a clan becomes a tribe when all the members, because everybody in the clan is related by blood.
Right.
Everybody in the clan is related by blood. When clans become tribes, it means that tribes have gathered clans who agree on a guiding principle to become one tribe.
That's where your religion comes in.
Exactly.
Strength and unity.
That's right. Our black institutions
Are in the South.
evolved in the South. All of the schools down South, they were land grant institutions, which meant that they started in churches. And the churches started with families.
Families, right.
Families generally
Gotta go back to that.
were the pillars of the individual churches, small and large.
Okay, so I have one question from each of you, if I could get a reaction. If you could talk to your younger self, your 16 or 18-year-old, what would you tell them that is the best thing about the life they're living at that time?
Well, first of all, I would tell them that you can make it if you try. That's the first thing. I think trying has so much to do with the person accomplishing their goal.
Maybe it was that my mother and I lived together. My father was gone. We had divorced. And she taught me a good work ethic. But I still watched her my whole life. And I knew that if she could be self-sufficient with the little bit of money that she had, that I could do it too.
Yeah, well, I was raised by my grandparents. They taught me well. They taught me independence, you know, and that if you work hard enough, you're going to get what you want.
I was taught things that will last you your life. You better not steal. Ooh.
Oh, God.
And don't lie.
Absolutely.
I'm going to use this example. If you're going to make a good cake or you're going to do something, you must have the right ingredients. I don't see the children of today having the right ingredients to make them independent, because that is all of our wishes.
My thing is, if I could look back and think of what I would have done as a teenager, I would not bother with people that didn't have a vision. I wouldn't take, so close to these people that aren't doing, because they sound a certain way. I don't have to worry about anything. That I can chart my own course.
Between 15 and 18, I would say was one of the better years of my life because of people I met. And those are good memories. point being is, you look back on your life, all these people play a part.
I was born in South Philly, out of a family of 8 sisters and brothers, and had a strong mother and father. From 6 to 9 years old, I was an addict, vanilla fudge addict. And I would steal money out of everybody's cigar box but mine, and they beat me. They wanted to send me to a home and everything. This continued till I was about 10, 11 years old. And I gave the career of stealing away. I try to do as right as I can to make my parents proud of me. That man beat me so bad, he says, hurt me more than hurt you. I said, stop beating on me. EGO is ego, edging God out. And when my brother died, I went to church to find out why he died. And from the church, I learned about knowing right and about truth. And the strongest thing, my pastor told me, words are the strongest thing out. Learn the word. And you can relate to another person. That's the kind of values I had, and that's why I speak so much about drugs, feelings and desires, thinking and reason. Because you think and use reason, you analyze the situation, you regulate it, and then you use the administrative justice to balance out your thinking and reason, which you learn from school. And it's sanctioned with the doing right with the according to God. That's my whole thing about our black community. We got to learn to first balance out our feelings and desires, use our thinking, reason in an appropriate way, and administrative justice with the act of knowledge and according to law of righteousness.
At 16, I would have said to my younger self, wow, this is a fantastic time in my life. 16 years old was a coming of age for me. My first love, new friends, the prospect of college, going away from home, all of this stuff, you know, was like in a stew, you know, in a big pot. And, you know, how do you separate it out and make the best morsels the ones that you're going to take? So that's me for 16.
So knowing that and knowing what has happened since then, what are you saying to that young man?
That young man is listen to me. That's what I say to that young man. Listen to me, listen to your parents. Listen to your parents, because they are not going to tell you anything wrong, and they're not going to let you go astray if they're good parents.
When we first got married, we jumped the broom. And then we had an anniversary and we jumped the broom.
Ooh, y'all sharp.
We walked
over jumping in.
How many years was that? 30.
Yeah. One.
This is a picture of my mother's sister when she got married.
Oh, that's a great picture.
Isn't that both of them?
She, as I told some people already, was 15 when she met the man that she was going to marry, but her father would not allow her to marry him at that time. He told him that he would have to wait 3 years until she was 18, which he did, and he came back after those 3 years and they were married.
Wow.
She's a twin.
Yes, she's a twin. She had 3 children. She died very young with tuberculosis. And this is the only picture of anybody in my, my mother's group that I think actually had a wedding. They may have gone to just to the peas, or they may have been married at home, but this one I think was a real wedding.
She was a twin, and their nicknames were Honey and Sugar.
Oh, that's interesting.
Their father called.
This is a Philadelphia Inquirer, 1944, and it was about the strike of the PTC workers during the Second World War. The strike was about the fact that they didn't want any black people, black men, driving the buses, and that's what the problem was. And the union was behind it at the time. In fact, one of the leaders was a union leader. So Roosevelt decided, well, they can't have that because the strike was keeping people from getting to the Philadelphia Navy Yard, which were building the ships for the war,
Yes.
for the war effort, right? So they sent this general there to talk to the people and the Union people about letting the blacks drive the trolleys. See, before then, the blacks were just a track gang. They didn't do anything else, but they wanted to make more money and drive the trolleys. So this general told the Union, first of all, they fired the Union leader, and he said, anybody else, they have a problem with it, we'll just send them over to the front. Well, you know what that did.
That slowed them down.
So they, at that time, that's when the first drivers were black, right after the Second World War. Yeah, I guess I'm right.
Where are you?
Her name was Mrs. Denver. That's why I went into home ec.
We put an article of an old paper.
I love that woman.
No, it's just this.
Ain't nothing.
But
He's the one that got
Go
all the
ahead.
pictures.
That's the way it was.
You can see some of the pictures. By the way, I said,
Conk, right?
Wait, where are you?
He's not on here.
Oh, okay.
Here where I'm at.
That's him.
you wanted to know if I had.
You know what I wanted to ask you? As a
Same
barber,
time.
Yeah.
how did you were a barber? I always wanted to ask, what happened like in the 70s and stuff when everybody was wearing those were lean years.
And they had the afros.
Yeah.
And then the process didn't help me either.
Yeah, because you want to get your hair cut.
Well, and I had to do this razor line, and plus my wife left me.
But this is the process.
That's the process.
You don't see that no more.
Well, you
see
do.
it on there.
They call it texturized.
The way it was.
Yeah, not a kink nor a curl. Conquerine rules the world.
You're getting too big for your britches. Before you do anything, stop, think, pray, so you don't have to pay. Weeping may last for a night, but joy comes in the morning. People come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
To all of you that don't understand, I believe in keeping things. They call me the hoarder. And at this time, I want to show you this brush that used to have a set with it. The lady that was my daughter's mentor, Aunt Wally. This is her brush, and it must be over, it's about 70, 80 years old. Because these pen words, vermifuge. Now what that mean, you gotta tell me.
That's like vermicelli, like the vermicelli.
Okay, well that's what it is. So now you know we had everything for everything in that time. It wasn't all special coated and all this. This is... I'm the elder. And you see how blouse is over, and it gives you that freedom of waist where you don't have to worry about a stomach to shift. What was that? And the beads are quite ancient too, and these were when I was a teenager and I kept them.